ready to build resiliency, create a healthy lifestyle, and overcome adversity with a warrior mindset. This is Define the Fight with Mariah Prussia.
So Dan Hudson, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me back, and I love your shirt.
Hey, me too. I got this great shirt from Dan this morning. I'm like, you know what? I had the shirt Dopamine is Free, and now I'm like Operation Check 6, baby, and that's what it's all about.
That's right. That's right.
Dan, clearly we've known each other for a few years. I've had you, interviewed you in the past, but what I love is that you continue to grow and you continue to just share and navigate life in such a different way. And plus you're down 70 pounds since pretty much the last time I saw you. So it's like almost another man.
Feel like a new man.
You're walking loud, but you're walking light.
And proud.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So Dan, let's lead into first. Let's talk about Operation Check 6, because I think it's very important for individuals to understand that our veterans serve. And how are we serving them? And what are you doing to help them with your organization?
Right. And completely legitimate question, because I just looked at some older statistics this morning. And between North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota, we have about 500,000 veterans. So per capita, based on population, that's a considerable amount. And listening and going through my own personal journey, learning about what can happen and what people can see, whether they're deployed, whether they're a first responder. And when I say first responder, I just want to be clear. Emergency room nurses, emergency room doctors, paramedics, firefighters, the folks that are on the front lines. Operation Check 6 started because of my wife. It was her idea, and that started in 2021. And she said we should do a nonprofit. I said, terrible idea, but she's the boss. So it ended up being one of the most profound, best ideas. And you'll get that throughout this interview, how my wife has really been profound in everything that we do. She is my rock. My savior when it comes to many things, and my conscience. So seeing brothers and sisters that were maybe struggling and thought they were the only ones struggling with memory, with dreams, with just everyday life, they weren't the same person they used to be. And it was becoming evident with me as well, with my family. It's like I was not whole anymore. And I don't know if we ever can be whole. We never have it the same way, but we have it better, if that makes sense. So we decided to start an organization that could identify this, little less awareness, a little more action. And the only way I knew how to do it was to write and to play music. And that's what we focused on. And we're blossoming into other ventures now, which is pretty exciting, that I know nothing about. So I'm having to rely on our talent.
And for you to be able to say, hey, something's going on. That is probably the hardest challenge for most individuals, is because we want everybody to see all of the highs of our life. But yet you could be putting on a smile, you could be giving to a lot of different other individuals, whether it's your family, your friends, or your community, but be dying inside. And I think that's what a lot of people need to look at, is you're not alone when it comes to whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whatever those different things are, because everybody has a little piece of trauma. And you may recognize it, you may not. And sometimes people will just go and put their foot on the accelerator, and it's like, I'm grinding in life and everything is okay because you know what? I'm still moving forward. When in reality is, as soon as that brake hits or a vehicle comes in front of you as a roadblock, then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, where are all of these emotions coming from? And how do I shift? How do I maneuver through these unexperienced or hidden emotions that I've been, packing away for years? So clearly you at some point said, all right, something's got to give here, or I'm really losing myself. Like you said, you're not feeling whole. What did that look like for you? What was that point where you're like, okay, I need help?
I can tell you the exact day, actually. And I don't know if everybody could do that, but I was in Hudson, Wisconsin, supporting a friend running a half marathon. And I did not want to be there. I was having a bad day, and I was there with my wife. And we got in the vehicle and drove from Hudson, Wisconsin back to where we live without stopping, and I unloaded. I said, this is where I'm at. I don't feel anything. I know what love is. I know what it looks like, but I don't know how to feel it. I really don't care. I was angry all the time, and I thought that was the norm, and it was not. And I think it's a good point that I'm unloading this on my wife. And then I start thinking back. It's like, I am definitely not the same person. The nickname in high school was Smiley, and I am not smiling. I'm not smiling inside or out. And we decided that day on that long drive, it's like, it's time to figure out what we're battling here. We don't know I don't even know what this is. Why is this happening? And that's exactly what we did. And we did it together. And I think that is why it has really stuck and grown. And as a nonprofit, that's why we have grown as well, because we need to identify what we're battling, or we don't even know how to begin.
And I think when you look at relationships too, the fact of sometimes we're on different climbs in the relationship, and personally and professionally, where one person might be climbing higher on that mountain, but it's important in a relationship to look back and say, where's my partner? Do I need to extend my hand and reach back so that I can climb with them, so that they're with me along on this journey? And it's going to flip-flop. Everybody's going to have different time frames where things come into play. You spoke about being numb. I remember one time in my life too, where it was that numb feeling where I couldn't feel the sun hit my face. My son was 1.5, so I don't know if it was, postpartum on top of an unhealthy relationship, where it's like even hugs, kisses to my son, I couldn't feel. And I didn't recognize until I came out of that mess, right, out of that storm, that I was depressed. And I just don't think we can put our thumbs on it sometimes, right, when we're in that darkness or that dark space.
That's right. That's 100% right. You say it, define the fight. You have to define what you're battling, or there is no plan for it, and it'll ultimately fail. And on the nonprofit side, I wouldn't call it failure, but typically when we bring a member on, we do strongly encourage they've completed some sort of therapy program, because that shows, one, their commitment to get better, and two, our nonprofit is an aftercare support system. It's a way to express yourself afterwards when you've been taught the tools. It's not counseling, it's not anything. It's friendship, it's family, and expressing yourself through the written word or music. But wholeheartedly, this is why we get along so well. We're very similar this aspect. I flat out, looking in hindsight, it's embarrassing to say, but I tried to get my wife to leave 1 million times. I really did. Not because I hated her, because I loved her. And she's a stubborn German woman, so lucky me. She stuck it out, and we do it together now. We do it together, and knowing your people, small circle, but knowing your people and the people that are there for you in your darkest times, those are your people. And we learn that. And sometimes we think the people around you are that, but they see something else, and they quickly rise to the top.
My significant other and I have had conversations about this too, where some individuals have left during times of need, and then you see others that stay, and there's different shifts back and forth. And I think sometimes the people that drop off are facing their own demons at the same time, and sometimes they come back and return. But the key is to make sure that you are surrounding yourself with positive support systems, that it doesn't matter what tier or what platform you're standing on, whether it's bronze, silver, or gold, that they're with you on every single step of the way. And, I'm glad that your wife is absolutely amazing. I love her. And I love the fact that, too, you guys want to make sure that everybody who's on board and working with your mission, that they've gone through the different training, because it's important, because if they haven't experienced different ways to heal, to help individuals, to mentor, then it's like, okay, what is the point? And I shouldn't say what is the point, but at the same point, they're not adequately tooled or equipped with what they need to help individuals. So you have to have a story and experience different things, because then the connection is there moving forward. Now, I know that you've gone through different storms within life, which clearly were identified in your book, PTS Me. We spoke previously about one impactful story, because there's many in there. But I want you to lead into like the train wreck and the push behind writing the book.
So the push behind writing the book was, it was a different idea completely. It ended up being something that I really didn't want to do. It was supposed to be a conglomeration when we were going through such a rough time with first responders and the public, and trying to help the public understand the culture of first responders, the dark jokes, the dark humor, and which are sometimes coping mechanisms, but that is a fact. And that's why the military kind of crosses over. They're very similar in that aspect, and a lot of our first responders are military members. However, I put a call out to all my first responder colleagues like, hey, I would really like some really funny stories, or it might help explain, and we'll just put a conglomeration together. And I had that idea from a book I read in college and kind of shaped my career path. And everybody thought it was a terrific idea. And so I waited, and I didn't receive one story. I'm like, okay. So I put the call out again. Second time's the charm. Everybody, once again, very supportive, and not one story. I'm like, I'm the kind of person who's like, fine, I'll do it myself. And I did not, people that know me will say I'm rather humble, and I am. It's just who I am. I really didn't want to talk about myself. But as I started to write this book, starting from childhood all the way to my present tense, I finally understood why I never received a story is very, very, very difficult to do. Having that cursor blink back at you as you're typing about yourself, it's very intimate. It's difficult to do, but it's also very therapeutic. And I started remembering some erroneous details from things, and I didn't want a book about doom and gloom. I wanted a book about reality and the truth. So that's what I did. And I left a lot of things out. I changed names, things like that, just to protect, even though I had permission. I'm like, you know what, let's just keep it general. And this is the focus. And I saw it as twofold. I'm like, hey, maybe this will help somebody and let them know that they're not the only person going through this. You did ask about one specific story in train wreck. It was a humbling experience because I was nearly killed by a moving train trying to save a suicidal person who was trying to be hit by that train. And I wouldn't say that's the start of my journey. It probably was a profound part of it. And that's one thing about trauma is you don't know which one your brain is going to perceive as the one that your brain needs to protect itself from. This one was profound. When I pushed the guy off the train, I nearly was hit by the train to the point where the individual that was my partner didn't have time to get across the tracks, but I did because I was in the driver's seat and I had a straight line. And when the second I tackled him, I was in a fight for my life. He was after my gun. He was after my radio. He wanted to not be alive anymore. And I did, and the fight was on. And when a train's traveling, a lot of people don't understand this. So the physics of it is it will cause like a swirling vacuum and pull you towards it. And we were close enough where that was happening, and we're fighting. And I have a lot of blanks still to this day. But through this journey of writing a book and speaking with people, I've started to remember some erroneous things, like I turned my spotlight on. Why would I do that? But I felt better. Afterwards, I had these gaps in time. And going back to the police department, it was perceived at the time, it's like, that was really dumb. Don't do that again. Try not to get in more trouble, and they throw you right back in a squad car. Now, is that a knock on them? Not, absolutely not. They didn't know any better. Neither did I. They really didn't. And I know that has changed now. That perception has changed. And I think that's really what the goal is here. It's like we need to really take care of our mental health. We need to really take care of these incidents and have time to process what's happened, because you will have scary moments of not remembering details. And when the person with you is writing the report and you're writing a report and you're reading the report and you're seeing things in there that you don't remember, it's terrifying. It was really terrifying. My heart was beating, and I give a shout out to a paramedic and still a dear friend of mine. When I got home, and I love doing the trainings for law enforcement officers because I have to do a technological piece. I said I had an answering machine and it had a blinking light, and I have to describe what that is to a lot of the younger people.
The younger generation.
Yes, yeah. Right. And it was what I thought at the time the stupidest message I ever received. It's like, I heard what happened. I just want to make sure you're okay. And I'm like, why wouldn't I be fine? And interestingly enough, I was at my niece's graduation in Omaha. And my brother goes, yeah, you remember what you did right after that incident? You came out to my house and you slept on the couch. I don't remember any of that. I still don't remember that. I kind of do now because he brought it up. But he goes, yeah, I was doing drywall, and I asked you if you wanted me to stop. I'm like, that did happen. Why did I go out to my brother's place? I don't know.
Well, your brain goes into protection mechanism.
Absolutely. I went to family.
Yep.
Is what I did.
How long after, so looking at all of the compartmentalizing everything into one, when you were writing and having different things come back, right? Did some of the senses come back, right? So when you think of writing, you're putting these different stories and releasing them again, right? So you're bringing them back up to the forefront, and then you're healing through your writing. What most people don't recognize too is sometimes the visions, the feels, the sense, the different senses that you had in that, particular experience. Did you have that when you were writing?
That's a super, super question. For me, it was the sense of smell. I could smell that squad car. And good, bad, or indifferent, if you've been in a police car, they have a smell. And it wasn't just me. Bismarck police officer, who's a friend of mine, he goes, I could smell my squad car when I was reading this. I'm like, I could too. And that is a really profound question because yes, I absolutely did. No one's ever asked me that, but that was the biggest thing. I could smell that squad car.
And there's so many different things that resurface when you're talking about trauma, or you're talking about PTSD. You're blacking out different things, but then there's different things that stay, right?
Correct.
So it's looking at, are those pieces safe? Or what was that body's response? And I think for most people, it's recognizing that when your body is in shock, you can't really control certain things, right? Your body is going to do whatever it needs, whatever type of armor to kind of help protect you and embrace you from being completely overwhelmed. So after your experience with the story, the train wreck, how long did it take, or looking at the days following, what did that look like, knowing that clearly you were in a fight. You were trying to protect somebody from their own, taking their own life or their attempt, but then also losing yours in the mix of that. What did the next days look like following?
I was a young police officer, and we talk oftentimes about addictions and things like that. What happened to me was I became very addicted to adrenaline. I needed the highest risk calls. Traffic stops, boring. No, thank you. Unless something exciting's happened, send me the most dangerous things. That's how I want to do it. And what level happened now in hindsight is that takes you down a path of risk-taking behavior. And, being young still, 2 years on, I knew everything, of course. I knew I was just the best of the best, and that's completely not true. I had so much to learn. I learned something new every day. But I started a path of risk-taking behavior, making some really dumb decisions, blowing lights with lights and sirens on when you should really be more cautious. And looking back now, it's like I was very lucky and fortunate. I wasn't trying to be irresponsible. I was trying to get to the fight. I have to get there because I'm the only one that can make a difference.
Dan, let's talk about how you led into your journey of healing.
Sure. There's a stigma. I mean, there's a stigma, whether you're in the military, whether you're a first responder, there's a stigma associated with it. And I would hope that stigma is slowly diminishing. And I'm seeing it diminish in my travels, which is terrific. The crowds are large, whether it be a speaking event or something. And the younger generation is very receptive to talking about it. Matter of fact, they'll raise their hand and tell me what type of therapy they've been in, which is very bold. But my journey was one of cowardice to courage. And on that trip from Hudson, Wisconsin, when as a family we decided to go figure out what was going on, I had my story ready to go. I'm like, I'm fine. They're the problem. Everybody's the problem, not me. And as we sat down to talk with someone about it, I didn't speak a word. My wife did all the talking, and I listened to her describe who I'd become. And for me, it was humiliating. I hadn't been emotional in years. And for the first time in about 20 years, I felt this hot bullet running down my cheek thinking of how much of a failure I was. And I was reassured it wasn't failure, it was something that needed to be addressed. And we decided that very day, we are absolutely going to fight this because now we know what it is. So that was my journey. I wish it was more exciting, but that I think the denial of it and the fear of what people would think. I'm to the point now, I wrote a book about it. So I'm to the point now, it's all about helping people. We need to get over that. And it took an incredible amount of courage for my family to come say, it's like, yep, this happened to our son and he's talking about it now. It's a journey of ups and downs. And it was described to me, your life will never be the same, but it'll be better. And that's exactly what it is. But you have to go all in on it. You have to put the effort and you have to complete it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to complete it. And if you're in a program or if you're speaking with someone and it's not working out, guess what? There's another person there you can talk to. You're not domiciled to one program. You're not domiciled to one therapist. And after that, there's aftercare. It's a continuing process. And I think it's important that you follow up and it's like a life choice, losing 70 pounds, making like quitting smoking, quitting alcohol, something like that. It's a life choice. And if you can do it together or with the family, it's all that much more strong.
100%. You mentioned the fact of your wife sharing from her eyes and her view. And I think that's a hard thing for every single individual is we have our own perception of how we show up, how we speak, our actions. But then when you're hearing it from your significant other on, no, actually, this is the different things and how it's impacting not only your life, but the life of your relationship. And for her, clearly to be courageous to share, because there's a lot of fear that lies behind the individual too. That's also the supporter or the loved one. Like, hey, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I want to make sure that I'm helping them. But at the same point, honesty has to be part of the equation when it comes to the healing and the growth of the individual and of the relationship. So for you, when you look back at your wife sharing what she saw, how was that for you? I know it was probably a gut check, but at the same point, how did you guys have better communication following?
It's almost like I knew it. It's almost like when she needed to say it and I needed to hear it because that had never happened. But when she did, I knew it to be the truth. Like you said, the honesty, the truth. It's like, if we're going to do this, it's going to be done right. And I don't like doing stuff 2 and 3 times. So it was a gut check, and it was then real, very, very real. And again, it was defining what was going on. It's like, this is what's going on. Now, what do we do? And I tell you what, I've been to a lot of places, and this Fargo VA is amazing, especially the mental health unit. I believe they were like the #1 in the country. I'm not certain, but I think they were. And they do care. And I've heard horror stories from others, but we are so fortunate. So I was in a perfect storm of a loving wife, geographically, a community that's very supportive, and an ethic that at that VA that they cared and are willing to help. And I was just in a really good spot because being a veteran, I had that resource, and not everybody does, but there are other resources out there. And I think it's important to note is, yeah, I'm a trauma survivor. I am. And you know what? The person you're meeting on the sidewalk may also be a trauma survivor, completely different circumstance. At no point can you compare those. We talked about the brain a little bit. It's going to do whatever it takes to preserve itself. Whatever it needs to sacrifice, it will to preserve itself. And I know people that have been through natural disasters. They're traumatized from these natural disasters. They've maybe lost everything or nearly lost a life, or maybe have lost a loved one. Their trauma is no less or no more profound than any type of my trauma. So it's not just first responders. It's the entire family, when that trauma is identified, that has had to deal with it. The children, the spouses, the significant others. Absolutely. They're living the same life. They don't know who they're going to get the next day. Are they going to get, for me, happy Dan or angry Dan or forgetful Dan? They know who they're going to get now. And that can that can come back.
And that's the most important, because when you have individuals that are like, okay, when you're talking about the happy Dan, the mad Dan, however that is, then that individual is walking on eggshells. And they just don't know when the rug is going to be pulled out from underneath them. So now they're in fight or flight mode. And what does that look like? So for you, navigating and working through the different coping mechanisms and skills that you needed and still need, we all need them. Do you still find that there's moments where you have triggers or points that are like, whoa, hold on, I just got hit by something, but you're able to clearly recognize it sooner before it goes deeper?
Absolutely. And that's another terrific point, because sometimes it would, for some people it smells. For some people let's talk situations. It's really easy to associate situations and jump to conclusions. And I think that's what's very helpful, is where you don't quickly associate something that's happening in front of you with something in the past, because it could be a delusion. It could be not even true. It's not even true. That's why I hate text messages. If you're going to have a tough conversation, you sit across and have a tough conversation, or you have a phone call, but at least a tough conversation. So there's no, inference in words, because there can be inferences in words. But yes, absolutely. Even to this day, I have to stop myself every now and then, like, all right, I see what's going on here. Like, I can predict the future or something. And it was a young child. I was saying something, they were listening to me, and they looked at me and said, that's not real, right? And I was like, you know what? You're right. That is not real, because I'm immediately going back to, like, this happened before, and this is what's going to happen again. If something good happens, it's going to be tenfold bad. I think you said it earlier. Inside, you're slowly dying. You really are. And you need to stop that climb downward and climb back upwards. And identifying that, it frees you so much. And you can feel the sun on your face. You can look out and see the beauty in the grass and in the flowers, and find yourself getting back to your hobbies. What has defined you? What has identified you?
Well, you mentioned that too, and it's like putting your oxygen mask on first. Anytime that you're on a plane, make sure you put your oxygen mask on. So if you feel like your oxygen is dispersed all over the place, you have to come back to that centered point, which is you, because you can't help anybody if you are fighting for breath, really, at the end of the day. And you had mentioned the fact of different thoughts, and because, I recognize the situation, it's very easy to get caught into self-sabotaging behaviors and emotions. I know I still work on different things with trust. That's one thing that I had to work through and continue to work through is, okay, this is a familiar situation. These are all of the different things that could stem from it. And, okay, take it or leave it. Is this actually happening? Or is this just a figment of my, imagination, or past trauma that's resurfacing again? And it's putting yourself in front of the stoplight. I need to stop right now. But I also need to talk about it. Having a safe place where you're with your spouse saying, hey, this is what I'm feeling right now, and this is why. And let's discuss this, because then it frees those thoughts or potentials of going into a deeper dive when there really doesn't need to be. And I think that's really what's important, is if you're in a relationship, family, friends, so on and so forth, and something starts to come to the forefront, like you mentioned, don't text, have an active conversation. So then, okay, and the more that you do that, the less likely those self-sabotaging thoughts or behaviors start coming into play. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree 100%. I mean, you can read a text message and say, what does this mean? And it's so easy to rabbit hole. It's like the Real Housewives of whatever, creating drama, and it's all unnecessary, and it can cause a lot of damage, unnecessary damage. And, to repair that takes 10 times the effort versus one misinterpreted thing. It can easily rabbit hole, and it gets sucked into this vacuum and combined in with everything else and compounds.
It's like opening up a portal and diving in. Right. It's like, all right, here we go. We're going for one heck of a ride.
Yes.
Dan, we spoke about your book, about Operation Check 6, but now you have an event that is coming up this Saturday called Operation Tribute. Let's talk a little bit more about what individuals can expect and what you're doing with the tribute.
So Operation Tribute stems back from when I was a child, and my parents both saying, both of my grandparents were World War II veterans. Like, boy, we should have had a recorder going when those two were talking. And I didn't disagree. Looking at the veterans in this area, we decided as a group collectively, let's go out to the veterans homes, speak to some of our most experienced and eldest veterans, and get their stories. Let's record their stories voluntarily, and we'll give the recording back to them that they can give to their family. And I thought it was a terrific idea, and it's a completely humbling experience, I will tell you, to listen to some of the stories of these veterans, whether they be Vietnam veterans or even some World War II veterans. And they're in their hundreds now, and they came in at the tail end of World War II, so this is where we're at with them. But sharp and characters. We used to play music for them afterwards, and it got very difficult because no one's head was in the right space because they're still trying to soak in these stories. And we found that a lot of the veterans didn't really talk a whole lot about their military service. They talked about their family. They spoke about their duty. And we asked one question at the end of each interview. It's like, if you could give this generation a piece of advice, what would you give? Resoundingly, every single one of them. Don't hate each other, just love each other. It's like, it's that simple, huh? It's like, yeah, it really is. I'm 103 and you're 51. So, if you want a long life, longevity and spirit.
We look at everything that's going on in the world right now. And if we had more love versus hate versus greed versus power, the world would be a completely different place, but it all starts with ourselves. And, I've mentioned this many times on air. What are you posting? Right? And what is your intention behind the post? If it's negative and it's belittling and it's degrading, I don't care if it's against somebody that you don't know or you do know or whatever it may or may not be. The only person that you're truly damaging is yourself.
100%.
And what you're doing is you're disconnecting yourself. And, again, it comes down to divide and conquer. And that's what's happening within our world, not just our country, but within our world. And if we can be the first person to make sure that we're moving in a different direction and gearing more towards love, we can still have rationality and pay attention to what's going on, but we can still navigate our life in a different perspective. And then what we put out is what we're going to receive. So if you feel completely empty and you're putting out negativity, okay, now maybe you need to change the sugar up a little bit.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly, and I have two things on that. The Operation Tribute, we're taking it to a next level, and Ruthie Zocker is our author. She is compiling all these stories into an anthology, into a book that will be available for people, and she's writing it in the first person. Phenomenal person, phenomenal writer. So I'm excited about that. I had the opportunity to interview Sammy Davis, who is a Medal of Valor recipient. And he knew a little bit about my backstory too. And he just kept staring at me, and it's kind of intimidating having a Medal of Valor recipient staring at you. He goes, I bet you're wondering why you did some of the things that you do, don't you? I'm like, yes, I do. I said, so I'm going to ask you, Sammy, I go, why did you do what you did to be a Medal of Valor recipient? Swim across a river 3 times and you didn't know how to swim. He goes, it's real simple. I go, is it now? And he goes, yeah, I did it for love. And it changed my life. Just that quick conversation. And that's why we do what we do as a family at Operation Check 6. We do it for love. And sometimes people aren't ready for that love. Sometimes they're ready for that love and need that love and that continued support. And I'm glad you brought the word love up, because I don't have a problem saying love, because I brought it up earlier. I know what that feels like now. Finally, again, it's come full circle.
And it's being able to identify it. So we talked about defining the fight, but defining what love is. And sometimes we're programmed to think love is this, right? So
Right.
Depending on how you're brought up, if you're brought up in chaos, that might feel like love compared to the calm or the fear of you may have lost somebody that was close to you that you loved, or something happened. So now the barriers or the boundaries are up and they're wrapped around your heart. And it's like, no, I know what that felt like. I was hurt in the past. But now it's healing those wounds so that you can open up to something that can be an unbelievable experience for you and for your partner or whoever that may or may not be. But for the stories, the fact that you guys are collecting stories from individuals who have actively served and have dedicated their lives in many ways, not only to our country, but in different ways is huge, because once those stories are told and actually written, now we can look back and read them. But if we never collect those stories, they're going to be left behind, and we have no memory or even thoughts of what individuals have endured. And it's very important, because history does repeat itself in different ways, but those are the most valuable things that are left behind. So I'm glad and grateful that you guys are going there and collecting those stories, because, man, think of the 100 years old. How many of them actually had the opportunity back in the day to share stories? It wasn't like a reporter was coming to your door. It wasn't like the news was calling you in to have a story. Now it's like, whoa, somebody's actually asking about what it felt like, what it was like, and, all of those different details. And you guys are providing them that platform to do so.
And, a really, really hat tip to the North Dakota Veterans Home. That place is beautiful, by the way. They have a cool wood shop. I love doing woodworking. But they have really facilitated this. And it started out, we had 4. And then all of a sudden, well, that was really fun. And all of a sudden, a lot of people wanted to do this, and that's terrific, because we want to collect as many as we can. And if we need to do a second book, we'll do a second book. But it's the true history. This is a firsthand account. If you speak with someone about climbing down rope ladders on D-Day, I don't know if I could. I can't comprehend it. Mm-hmm. And young, it's like, well, I wasn't afraid of getting shot. I already knew I was probably going to get shot. I was afraid of drowning. That was the thought process. It's like, how do you go to that place?
You don't, or you do, right? And,
right.
And they did.
And they did.
And they did. So, Dan, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, for sharing your love.
Yes.
Your experiences with individuals being vulnerable. Excuse me, let me clear my throat. Vulnerable enough to share, because that does take courage. Now, how can individuals learn more or get connected with Operation Check 6 or with your book?
Sure. The book is on Amazon. It's a self-published book. All those proceeds go right into our nonprofit. As far as our website, it's operationcheck6.org, and we're on Facebook too. And we got a bunch of cool pictures on there, and we'll eventually be adding some of the songs that we do, some of the originals. We'll be mastering them and putting those on there as well. And we also have a YouTube page too with some of our current music.
Awesome. You guys make sure that you check out Dan Hudson, PTS Me, on Amazon, operationcheck6.org. And, if you're struggling in life, make sure that you are reaching out. Actively search for individuals. If you don't have family members or friends, just know that there are individuals who are willing and wanting to help you along this journey. So other than that, you guys check out definethefight.org if you are looking to also help children, empower them to lead from within. We look forward to seeing you guys next week on Define the Fight.